Hello everybody, this is Senex and welcome to video blog number 2, where we're going to be talking about a couple of things that have been happening in the StarCraft and kind of general Blizzard community in the last, just generally week or so. So the two things I really want to focus on in this blog is the post that Destiny made about the future of StarCraft 2. Not all of it. I know that a number of people will be like, oh my god, that's a huge topic. It's like, well, no, just a little bit of it. And also the recent patch that just came out for Diablo 3 and what I think it might mean for the future of the game. And so hopping right into the thing with Destiny, basically for those who don't know, Destiny made a very well thought out, nice long post talking about why he thinks, I kind of disagree with him on this, but why he thinks that StarCraft 2 will be dead by the time Legacy of the Void is going to be coming out. And so while I disagree that that's kind of what his points ultimately lead to, a number of his points were really, really good. And you can go and you can find the original posts on Reddit, it's on Team Liquid, and you can look at all of the arguments that are made and kind of generate your own opinion on that. But there's one I really did want to focus on, and that's that he talks about how Heart of the Swarm is going to be a very awkward point for the future of StarCraft. And I'm really forced to agree with him, because there's going to need to be a time when gamers, professional gamers, and organizations decide, are we doing Heart of the Swarm or are we doing Wings of Liberty? And that's not an easy decision to make unless the game is exceptionally well crafted. Because if it's obvious that Heart of the Swarm is just really, it's balanced, it's superior in almost every way, it adds tons of new tactical depth and units and stuff, then you just kind of switch over when it comes out. That's really cool. But from what we've seen in the beta, there's been a little bit of like hesitancy, a lot of really radical redesigns, units being taken in and removed, and I totally understand it. It's a beta, that's why they're experimenting with these things, but it does kind of imply that there might be the time when Heart of the Swarm is released, but it's not quite ready for prime time yet. And so what then will happen to the scene? Will you have a lot of pro gamers beginning to actually do Heart of the Swarm things, or will a lot of them just say, you know what, Wings of Liberty is balanced, this is my job, I cannot afford to be messing around with crazy, like, potentially imbalanced things, and so I'm just going to kind of leave it. Another reason, too, that a lot of people might look at Heart of the Swarm and say, you know what, I'm not really that interested in trying to switch over, and this is less from the professional scene and more from the casual gamer scene, is that it might not change enough. And that's, I think, a really important and kind of major point to look at, and something that I would really encourage people in the community to try to talk to Blizzard about as much as possible, and I'll talk about more how you can do that in a minute. And basically, kind of what the idea with that is that StarCraft Classic to Brood War was a huge transition. I'm actually going to go over just a couple of things that were like particularly critical in that. So, just in terms of new units that were introduced, for Protoss, you got the Dark Templar, a now mainstay unit of the entire race, and the Corsair. Those combined together ended up making the Dark Templar Corsair build, which was kind of the go-to strategy for going against Zerg. For those who aren't really familiar with Brood War, you would use the Corsair to hunt down Overlords to get rid of their detection, and then you'd use the Dark Templar to do some good harassment. And Zergs could usually defend it, but could also take some damage. It was a little bit... This isn't the greatest analogy, it was a bit like Hellions, where, like, if they screwed up, they could take tons of damage, but generally you just dealt a little bit of damage, got good map control, and that was mostly what you wanted out of it. But that didn't exist at all in classic StarCraft. Those two units completely redefined the way that the game worked. You similarly had things like the medic. There had been no way to heal up your infantry units in classic StarCraft. The medic was huge in making sure that you could actually utilize a lot of the bio builds, simply because the healing ability is so good. Once again, that's now a mainstay unit in StarCraft 2. The idea of having a medevac or other kind of healing unit working on your infantry during and after a battle to heal them back up to full. And then finally, kind of the arguably biggest one ever is the Lurker, which also, for the Zerg, completely redefined the way that the race plays. Gave them badly needed AoE. It allowed them to deal a lot of harassment and pressure and get a lot of map control by leaving them in strategic locations. Day 9 had a great point where I think at a certain point it was 4 Lurkers was the magic number, but 4 Lurkers at the top of a ramp could hold off pretty much infinite Marines. And so that allowed you to control parts of the board very well and force a Terran to do a very specific kind of attack to get through. And so kind of the point behind all of this is that what Brood War did was really change the game. If you were incredibly familiar with StarCraft 2, with just plain StarCraft, you would not necessarily be able to utilize the same things in Brood War. What I'm worried, and what Destiny and other people who are responding favorably to the idea are worried about, is that there's not going to be that much different in Heart of the Swarm. So you have units which ultimately don't necessarily change things all that much or aren't really useful. This is particularly geared towards Protoss, who are really utilizing builds that are almost identical to what they just kind of do in classic StarCraft 2. They basically go for the same kind of death ball style. They might get a little bit of Oracle harassment in, but like that's, I don't know, not as common from all of the things I've been trying to watch of Heart of the Swarm. Right now there's still not a really good role that the Tempest is filling. It's kind of like pew-pewing away at things from a distance sometimes. I've seen White Rod do some cool stuff with it. But even as I was watching it, I tended to believe his success with it was because White Raw is a ridiculously good player, and he was going against a kind of mid-masters player, and so like he got to do wacky stuff and win, not necessarily because the Tempest was such a great unit and it was doing cool stuff. And so this also applies to the other races as well, where you have, for example, the Terran. They used to have the Warhound, but now basically the only real new units they're getting are the Widowmine and kind of the Battle Hellion, or Hellbat, which it now is, both of which are undergoing such bizarre, radical changes that I really feel like they indicate that they don't quite know where to go with them, particularly the Hellbat being healed. Is such a strange design decision. It really seems like they don't quite have a clear vision at Blizzard of what they want this unit to do. And so Zerg is a little bit less hit by this because the Swarm Host obviously does very, very cool things for them, does get them some decent pressure options, will noticeably change the game as it is implemented, and the Viper as well also dramatically changes how engagements will go for them, lets them do very different strategies, and so that's actually pretty cool. I actually quite like the way that Zerg is going right now. The other two are struggling a little bit, I feel. And so what can be done about this is, I actually probably should have had this open from the start. Forgive me as I have to now go and find it. There we go. It's something Root Cats started. I just want to give you quickly the hashtag that you can do, because it is a Twitter idea. Where basically what he is doing is he's saying that everybody should go and start doing a hashtag save Heart of the Swarm and whatever idea you have for things that you think would really help the game become kind of what we all want it to be. We all really want Heart of the Swarm to be a success. Like Destiny, nobody is saying that they're like, oh, it's doomed and we should just abandon it. We hate Heart of the Swarm. StarCraft 2 is awful. It's like, no, we love this game. We really want it to do well. And so making sure that the best ideas are out there and that Blizzard understands how much people are committed to this, I think is definitely a great thing to do, and I'd really encourage everybody to, once again, it's hashtag save HOTS, and then whatever idea you have, whatever thought you might have. You can also put in at Blizzard CS or at StarCraft, which will also help it kind of get some more exposure and do kind of cool stuff like that for you. Hopefully your message will get out there and be heard. And I think that that's all I wanted to talk about with this. Give me just a moment to review. Yeah, for those who haven't read this post, I really recommend that they go or that you go and talk to it, because that you go and look it over, I should say, because there's a lot of good points where he's talking about how, for example, the business side, how can StarCraft actually be grown? Who needs to do things? He points a lot at Blizzard as saying like you really, really, really need to do things. How would you make it more kind of, I don't want to say noob, but kind of casual gamer friendly? Because, for example, in Brood War, a lot of people did like big game hunters and 2v2, v2, v2, v2 as their kind of main source of fun. Whereas in StarCraft, basically you have the ladder. StarCraft 2, you have basically the ladder and you kind of like fight people in an ultra high stress scenario, and that drives a lot of people away. So, yeah, definitely go check it out. And hopefully, I really, really, really do think that if a lot of people begin really tweeting a lot of good ideas out there, that we might end up seeing some awesome new things being implemented in the beta, because that's where some of the best ideas need to be experimented with. I don't necessarily disagree with radical changes happening in the beta as new things are tried. I just really want them to be clearly moving towards the idea of a better game rather than kind of trying to like whack-a-mole on what the most recent issue was and what a kind of hopeful solution to that is. Once again, I'm looking at you, biological hellions. This was an awful idea. But anyway, so then moving on to the other thing I wanted to talk about, much more positive, is Diablo 3 just had a patch come out, which was the 1.05 patch. Diablo 3, for many people, including myself, was a huge disappointment. Not quite as positive as I was hoping to open this out with, but we kind of have to go there. Basically, it suffered from major gearing and itemization issues. It was highly grindy. There was no endgame to speak of. The story was an abomination. But Blizzard has been continuing to work on it, and I'll actually give them mad props for kind of looking at the issues, and they've been addressing them quite well, actually. A number of them are still there, like the story hasn't been fixed at all. I'm not sure they can do anything about that, but for a story nerd like me, that's kind of a big deal. But in terms of improving the gameplay, improving class balance, and making it so that you can actually get the gear that you're looking for without either just straight up buying it or doing like absolutely obscene amounts of farming and basically having no life, they've moved towards having a much more reasonable way of approaching that and kind of making it more accessible. And so the number one thing I want to point out is the new monster power system, which is what I've been having a lot of fun with, where basically you get to pick kind of monster power 1 through 10 as you create a new game, and that scales up the difficulty of the monsters, but also your magic find, your chances of finding cool new loot. And because you can adjust it very fine-tunedly, you get to pick, do I want to be clearing things very, very quickly with a high DPS spec, but not very tanky? Do I want to take a bit longer to kill things, but have a better chance for each thing to drop better items at a higher monster power? Grouping with other people also is a very good thing, because it gives you kind of like more opportunities to find things, potentially trade amongst each other with them. Also, the amount that monsters get better by is not proportional to how useful it is to have another person in the party. So having 4 people clearing something is actually easier than clearing it by yourself, assuming that they're all roughly as geared and skilled as you. And that's made it feel a lot more like Diablo 2, which was a game I absolutely loved. Diablo 2 is arguably the greatest RPG of all time, in my humble opinion, and I've spent countless hours in high school playing that game. And so, since 1.5 has come out, or 1.05, 1.5, whatever. No, yeah, 1.05 has come out. I've been playing a lot of Diablo 3 and actually really enjoying it. I'm not tremendously geared, so I'm playing at a pretty low monster power, but it feels like Diablo 2 in that I'm fighting things that are challenging, but not insta-glib, like they kind of show up and kill you and you have no chance to react. There's constant pressure on your health bar. You need to be doing things in order to stay alive, but it's not one of the key issues they ran into in the kind of early versions of Inferno that they had right when the game came out, where there was basically nothing between a monster that was completely no threat whatsoever and you weren't afraid of, and killed you instantaneously when you had no time to react. There was like no middle ground in between there. Because of the way the monster power system is implemented, there's quite a bit of middle ground in there, and you can kind of pick where it feels comfortable for you to play. And so anybody who's put down the game deciding, no, I'm done, there's so many issues with this, I'm just not even going to deal, there's a number of other good games I could be playing, I'd say give it one more chance. It definitely still has problems, but Blizzard has been working on it and doing a great job, and I really am proud of them, kind of. I sound like the proud parents. Yes, I'm very proud of the effort that they're putting in to make it into a game that's kind of a worthy successor. I still think things need to be done with the story, but slowly but surely it's a game that I'll actually recommend to people. This is a lot of fun and this is worth your time, as opposed to, like, actually you should probably just be doing something else. And so, kind of that's the news from Lake Wobegon. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section at the bottom of this video, and I hope everybody has enjoyed my thoughts and rambling on the most recent things in kind of StarCraft and the general gaming community. This is probably what I'm going to be doing in a number of the video blogs, just kind of talking about things that are upcoming or have recently happened, kind of giving my own thoughts and opinions on them, but I will also probably throw in a couple of other random things as they come up, like things in personal life or whatever. And so if there's anything you want to see more of, once again, leave me a comment. It'll be great to hear from you. Trying to think. Another great way to reach me is on my Twitter. I'm at WiseOldSenex. And I think with that final shameless plug, I'm just going to end it right here. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.